She simply nodded and signed the divorce papers. And that very night, her revenge began. No tears, no accusations, no drama. After 20 years in the shadows, Serena quietly watched the man who once called her his muse walk hand in hand with a girl half her age. She didn't beg. She didn't explain. She didn't make a scene. Because she knew, the only thing worse than betrayal is being underestimated. He thought he'd won. The house, his. The company, his. Her, gone. But what he didn't know was that the moment she nodded, Serena had already set in motion a plan she'd been building for years. A counterstrike without a single shot fired, yet powerful enough to make his empire crumble, piece by piece. And the cruelest part? By the time he realized what was happening, everything he thought he owned already bore the name of the woman he believed was powerless. If you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or left behind, stay till the end. This story is for you. For Serena didn't argue. She didn't call her lawyer. She didn't cry. The morning after he moved in with Lana, she packed one small bag. No shouting, no goodbye, only the slow sound of drawers closing. Outside, rain blurred the driveway lights. Her breath fogged the glass as she watched herself fade from the reflection. In that silence, something inside her settled. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. People think silence is empty. Hers was full, of memory, of strategy, of numbers she still knew by heart. Every account, every contract, every clause that bore her name. She left the house without looking back. The city swallowed her reflection, yet she felt lighter. Graham believed he'd closed the story. He didn't see that her quiet exit was the first line of a new one. Sometimes the loudest revenge begins with no words at all. Before the silence, there was laughter. Late-night pizza on cardboard boxes, 2 laptops glowing. Serena drew blueprints while Graham pitched to investors. They had nothing but belief. She remembered the smell of coffee and rain outside their small apartment. He promised, "When this works, I'll build you a home of glass so you can always see the sky." She smiled, believing him. Years slipped by. The startup became a tower. Their names printed side by side on contracts, awards, invitations. She never wanted credit. Her joy was watching him win. At company parties, he would raise a glass. "We built this together." She believed the word we still meant both of them. Now, standing alone, she wondered when we had turned into I. 20 years, gone like breath on glass. But memory waits. It watches. It becomes fuel. The change began quietly. A forgotten birthday dinner. A text unanswered until morning. The way his laughter started sounding like someone else's echo. Serena noticed but said nothing. Questions only feed distance. She listened instead to the pauses between his words. They told her everything. He traveled more. Weekends blurred into absences. Photos appeared online. Crowded rooms, a new smile beside him. When she asked how it went, he said, "Just business." She nodded, though another woman's perfume lingered on his jacket. Cracks never shout when they appear. They whisper through routine, through the empty seat at dinner, through the silence where love used to rest. Serena marked each quiet omission in her heart. Not anger, just awareness. The kind that slowly reshapes love into distance. Every betrayal starts softly. The first time Serena saw her was beneath gold chandeliers. The annual Vance Tech Gala. Hundreds of guests, cameras, champagne. Lana Pierce entered in silver silk, her laughter slicing through the music. Serena watched from across the room. The girl was effortless, the way youth often is. Reporters turned. Flashes followed. Graham's smile widened in that light. Their eyes met for a second. Wife and stranger. Serena's glass trembled. She steadied it. Her reflection in the crystal looked older, sharper, a woman fading from her own story. Later, he said, "She's just helping with PR." Serena nodded. Denial is sometimes the last act of hope. When the gala ended, rain began outside the hall. Serena walked alone to her car, heels tapping against marble like a slow heartbeat. In the window's reflection, two women existed for one breath. One rising, one disappearing. The camera never noticed the difference. Soon, the world forgot Serena's name. Magazines called Graham and Lana the golden couple of tech. Photos of them smiling in front of the glass haven filled every feed. The same rooms Serena once filled with warmth were now backdrops for someone else's fame. Inside those walls, laughter sounded rehearsed. Interviews painted a perfect picture. Youth, success, rebirth. No one asked where the first wife went. No one cared. Serena read the headlines in a quiet cafe. No makeup, no statement. Only a small smile that no one understood. She knew how much of that perfection was built on her foundation, and how fast facades collapse when truth begins to breathe. While the world clapped for their love story, she studied contracts, old files, forgotten clauses. Silence can hum like electricity when purpose fills it. The cameras faced the mansion. They never saw the woman behind the curtain, waiting. The divorce papers arrived in a clean envelope. No message, no apology. Just legal ink where love used to live. In the lawyer's office, everything smelled like paper and rain. Graham's name, printed bold at the top. Serena's, smaller beneath. She read every word not to remember, but to confirm what she already knew. He thought this was an ending. To her, it was a transaction. The pen glided across the line. Her hand didn't shake. When it was done, she looked up and said quietly, "You'll need my signature again someday." The lawyer hesitated, unsure if it was grief or prophecy. Serena closed the folder, slipped on her coat, and walked into the drizzle. Some papers and a marriage. Others begin a revolution. That evening, she returned once more to the house. The lights were dim, only the sound of the rain against glass. She walked through every room, fingers brushing the walls she designed. The scent of cedar, the soft hum of old music still in the air. This place had once been her heart made solid. In the kitchen, she touched the counter where she once rolled out dough for Sunday mornings. In the bedroom, she opened the window to let the night breathe in. Moonlight scattered across the floor like shards of memory. She whispered a soft goodbye, not to the house, but to the woman she used to be. Outside, her reflection blurred on the glass. One life ending, another waiting. She left the key on the table, and for the first time in years, the silence felt like freedom. News spread like wildfire. The wedding of Graham Vance and Lana Pierce, streamed live, shared everywhere. A perfect ceremony under white arches, dripping with money and flashbulbs. Serena watched from her apartment window. Muted television light flickered against her face. She didn't cry, she didn't even blink. Reporters called it the new beginning of a visionary. They never mentioned the woman who built that vision with him. On the screen, Lana smiled, radiant and certain. Serena leaned back in her chair, tea growing cold beside her. The vows sounded rehearsed. The kiss looked like branding. When the broadcast ended, she turned off the TV. The room was quiet again. She exhaled, steady, the sound of someone reclaiming her own air. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing away everything that no longer belonged to her. The night after the wedding, Serena opened her laptop. The glow lit her face like a quiet awakening. She entered the system she once built for Vance Tech. Her access still worked. Of course it did. Years of work had taught her where power truly lived. Not in headlines, not in rings, but in documents, percentages, and names on paper. She reviewed every subsidiary, every hidden trust. Tiny signatures that once meant nothing now formed a map, a silent blueprint of control. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Inside, her fingers moved with calm precision. She wasn't stealing. She was reclaiming. By the time the storm cleared, the first threads of ownership had already shifted. He slept beside his new wife, dreaming of empire. She was awake, rebuilding her own. Night after night, Serena worked alone. Her desk was lit by a single lamp, the glow reflecting off stacks of old contracts. Each document held a memory, and every signature carried weight. She didn't change much, just a clause here, a name there, small shifts invisible to anyone who wasn't looking, but she was looking, and she understood that power hides in details. Voting rights, ownership percentages, control of subsidiaries buried under layers of paperwork. She signed her name again, slow and steady, as if rewriting the past line by line. Every pen stroke was a move on a silent chessboard. No noise, no rush, only precision. Outside, the city pulsed with noise. Inside, she built her revenge with ink. When she finished, she closed the folder and whispered, "One day, you'll read these and finally understand." Weeks later, Graham appeared on a talk show. Perfect suit, calm smile, the voice of a man adored by millions. The host leaned in. "What really happened between you and Serena?" He sighed, rehearsed. "We grew apart. It happens." The audience nodded, sympathetic. It sounded so simple, so harmless. Serena watched from her kitchen, coffee growing cold in her hands. The TV light flickered across her face, emotionless. She knew every lie in his tone, every pause that hid guilt behind charm. The interviewer laughed. "And your new marriage?" Graham smiled wider. "I'm happier than ever." The applause rose. Serena muted the sound. She didn't need to hear the rest. He spoke to a nation. She spoke to no one. But truth travels differently. It waits, quiet, until the lies grow too loud to stand. The next morning, tabloids bloomed across every newsstand. Forgotten wife of Vance Tech. She vanished without a fight. The photos showed Serena leaving a bookstore, alone, her face half turned from the camera. People read the headlines between coffee sips, judging a story they didn't know. She'd become a symbol of pity, an afterthought in her own life. Serena sat by the window, newspaper folded neatly beside her. She read each line once, then smiled. It wasn't bitterness, it was recognition. They only write you off when they've stopped looking behind you. And behind her, something was already shifting. The world thought she'd surrendered. But the world didn't read fine print. She sipped her tea, sunlight catching her ring finger, bare but steady. "Forgotten?" she whispered. "Not for long." The cameras followed the moving trucks up the hill. Lana Pierce arrived at the Glasshaven estate with designer boxes and a white dog. Reporters waited at the gate, flashing lights against the glass walls. Inside, the marble floors gleamed. The same ones Serena chose years ago. Lana's heels clicked across them, leaving new echoes where old love once lived. She smiled for the cameras, posing in the kitchen Serena designed, standing in the garden that once held their anniversary dinners. The photos hit the internet within hours. Lana Pierce brings new life to the Vance mansion. Serena saw one by chance. Her thumb hovered over the screen. No anger, just that strange ache of being replaced by someone who didn't know what came before. She turned off her phone and whispered, "Enjoy the view, darling. The foundation still has my name on it." Then, Serena disappeared. No more photos, no more posts. Her accounts went dark. People assumed she'd broken under the weight of humiliation. Some pitied her. Others forgot she existed. But disappearance can be a disguise. She hadn't vanished. She'd withdrawn to watch, to plan. From a quiet apartment above the harbor, she studied every market report, every movement of Vance Tech stock. The storm outside matched the one she held inside. Wind against glass, her steady breath the only sound. Graham believed she'd retreated into shame. Lana believed the past was buried. Neither noticed the tremor already forming beneath their empire. Serena didn't need to be seen to be powerful. Visibility was for those who still needed validation. She didn't. She only needed timing, and her silence was almost over. Weeks passed. From her quiet apartment, Serena watched the numbers move like tides. Small companies under the VanceTech umbrella began to shift. New boards formed, old ones dissolved. Each document carried her signature, each step hidden inside legal precision. She didn't steal, she restructured. Ownership moved like water, quiet and unstoppable. Late nights blurred into dawn. She traced patterns across screens, finding pathways even Graham had forgotten. The empire he thought he owned was changing shape under his feet. No one noticed the rhythm at first. Just a new address here, a small acquisition there, all invisible until it wasn't. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in documents and board minutes no one reads. By the time the quarter closed, Serena had built a network that pointed back to her. Not a threat, a design. Her footsteps were silent, but they were everywhere. It started as a question in an email, then a missing report. A discrepancy no one could explain. Graham frowned at the numbers. One subsidiary showed losses where there should have been profit. Another's signature line was blank, though he was sure he had signed it. He called accounting. They blamed the auditors. The auditors blamed software. The chaos circled back to him. At night, he sat in his office, screens glowing like restless ghosts. Something was wrong. Something small, precise, intentional. He sent messages, demanded updates, raised his voice. Still, the numbers didn't add up. Money had moved, but no one could trace where. In the reflection of his window, he saw his own unease. The empire that once obeyed him was beginning to question its master. The silence that used to mean control now sounded like warning. The corridors of VanceTech filled with murmurs. Executives spoke in the low voices by the elevators. Assistants exchanged glances over coffee. Someone was moving things behind the scenes. Someone powerful enough to sign off on internal transfers. The name appeared again and again on encrypted memos. Caldwell Holdings. Graham heard the rumors, brushed them aside. He told himself it was noise, jealous speculation. But even he felt the unease settle in. Meetings grew tense. Questions multiplied. Who had control? Who was watching? The company that once felt like steel now felt porous, alive, almost sentient. And beneath the noise, Serena's fingerprints spread like quiet roots. Every whisper traveled faster than truth. Every silence felt like proof. By the time Graham realized he'd lost the narrative, it was no longer his to tell. Monday morning came with rain and urgency. Graham called for a full board meeting. The air inside the glass conference room was thick, electric. Files opened, charts appeared. He demanded answers. Who was behind the ownership shifts? The legal director hesitated, eyes flicking toward the display. One document projected on the screen. A single line that stopped the room cold. Majority shareholder, Serena Caldwell, 52%. For a moment, no one breathed. Graham's hand froze mid-air. He blinked, certain it was a mistake, but the seal, the verification, the dates, all correct. The man who once owned everything was now the minority. His voice cracked as he whispered, "This isn't possible." The board exchanged looks, careful, nervous. Power had changed hands without a sound, and in that silence, history rewrote itself. The next day, she came back. The doors to the VanceTech tower opened, and every head turned as Serena Caldwell stepped inside. She wore gray, simple, and sharp. No diamonds, no press, no spectacle. Just composure. The elevator ride felt eternal. When the doors opened, she walked through the hall, steady, deliberate. Graham stood waiting at the far end of the boardroom. His expression, disbelief and anger tangled together. She stopped across from him. Neither spoke. The sound of the rain filled the space between them. He finally broke the silence. "What have you done?" Serena looked at him, calm as glass. "What I built, what I protected." The board watched in awe. A quiet woman had returned, not to beg, but to lead. And in that moment, the empire remembered whose hands had shaped it. The room held its breath. Serena stood in front of the board, calm, composed, unshaken. No anger in her voice, no victory in her eyes. Graham stared at her across the table. "You planned this," he said. "All these years." She met his gaze. "I didn't plan revenge," she answered softly. "I came to finish what I started." Her words settled like dust, quiet but impossible to ignore. The board looked at her with something close to awe. They had seen men fight for power, but never a woman stand this still in it. Serena gathered the papers before her. "This company was built on something real. It deserves to be protected from greed, even mine." For the first time, Graham had no reply. He understood too late that her silence had never been anger. It had been strategy and mercy. Outside, thunder rolled again, but this time it sounded like closure. A week later, Serena called a press conference. The room filled with reporters expecting a battle. Instead, they found Grace. She announced a new foundation, the Caldwell Initiative for Women in Innovation. Her voice steady, her message clear. "Most of what I hold in Vance Tech will now fund scholarships, mentorships, and startups led by women who were told they couldn't." Flashes exploded, but Serena didn't flinch. She spoke of opportunity, not revenge, of building doors, not walls. The reporters tried to find scandal in her tone. There was none, only purpose. She ended with a single line that silenced the room. "Legacy means nothing if it ends with you." By the time she stepped off the stage, the narrative had shifted. No longer the forgotten wife. She was the woman who turned loss into light. The headlines changed overnight. Serena Caldwell, the silent architect. The woman who outsmarted a billionaire with grace. Talk shows replayed her speech. Women across the country shared her words, their comments filled with tears, pride, and recognition. Meanwhile, investigations opened into Vance Tech's past accounts. Questions piled up. Where had the money gone? Who signed off on the deals? For once, Graham had no answers. His phone rang without pause. Investors withdrew. Partners distanced themselves. The empire that once defined him now stood under Serena's shadow. But it wasn't her doing. It was his reflection finally catching up. The same world that had once pitied her now called her extraordinary. And she, in quiet dignity, never said a word. Justice didn't need her voice anymore. It was speaking for itself. The mansion grew quieter by the day. Reporters stopped calling. Invitations stopped coming. The glitter had faded, leaving only walls of glass and silence. Lana packed her bags before sunrise. No fight, no tears. Just a note on the marble counter. "I didn't sign up for this." Her perfume lingered in the air long after she left. The same scent that once felt like victory now smelled of retreat. Graham found the note hours later. He read it twice, then sat down at the same table where Serena once planned his empire. For the first time, the house felt foreign to him. A museum of everything he'd lost, and everyone he'd underestimated. Outside, the glass walls caught his reflection. He didn't recognize the man staring back. Even the view had stopped believing in him. Nights at the glass haven turned endless. Graham wandered through empty halls, each echo a reminder of the voice that used to fill them. His phone buzzed with alerts he no longer understood. Lawsuits, resignations, the slow disassembly of his kingdom. He sat alone at the dining table, the same spot where Serena once laughed over coffee. The silence pressed against him, heavy, alive. The only light came from his phone screen. News headlines scrolled past his tired eyes. Everyone carried her name. He whispered it once, under his breath. Not with anger, not even regret. Just loss. The empire he'd built to feel powerful had collapsed in the quiet she left behind. For the first time in his life, Graham Vance understood what silence could do. It could build. It could destroy. And it could bury him in the space he once called home. Weeks passed before Graham found the courage to write. The house was too quiet. The days too long. He sat at the same desk where once he had signed contracts of power. Now he signed words of surrender. He began slowly, the ink trembling on the page. He wrote about regret, about blindness, about love mistaken for control. He wrote that he finally understood what she had built. Not just a company, but him. Each line felt heavier than the last. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He only hoped she would read it. When he sealed the envelope, he looked at her name one last time. Serena Caldwell. It still sounded stronger than his own. The letter left with the morning mail. Outside, the rain returned, the same rhythm as years before. In silence, he whispered the truth he should have spoken long ago. "I'm sorry." The reply arrived a week later. A single envelope. No return address. Her handwriting. Elegant, familiar, calm. He opened it slowly, expecting anger, maybe forgiveness. There was only one line. "Thank you for teaching me what silence can earn." He read it again, then again. The paper shook in his hands. There was no bitterness in her words, no triumph, just truth. He folded the letter carefully and placed it on the desk. It felt like the end of a long conversation between two people who had finally stopped pretending. Outside the window, the storm had passed. Only quiet remained. Time softened everything. Vance Tech was no longer hers, no longer his, but its legacy lived on through the Caldwell Initiative. On a summer morning, Serena walked along the beach near her new home. Waves brushed her feet. Gulls cried overhead. Nearby, a group of young women laughed together, holding scholarship letters in their hands. The first graduates of her foundation. She smiled, distant but content. Every dollar, every sleepless night, every heartbreak had led to this. Not empire, but impact. A camera crew filmed quietly from afar, a short feature on the woman who turned betrayal into opportunity. Serena waved them away, preferring the sea's applause to theirs. She closed her eyes, breathed in the salt air, and whispered, "This is what freedom sounds like." The world eventually forgot the scandal. Names faded. Buildings changed hands. But the story of Serena Caldwell lingered. They called her the quiet architect, the woman who never raised her voice but moved mountains. Because power isn't always loud. It doesn't need to shout to be felt. Sometimes it walks away quietly, leaving the world to wonder how it lost so much to someone who said nothing at all. Serena's story became more than history. It became a reminder that silence, when chosen, isn't weakness, it's mastery. And somewhere in Seattle, under gray skies, a light still burned inside the glass haven, a reflection of strength that never needed noise. She didn't destroy him. She rebuilt herself. And maybe that's the truest kind of revenge. Peace. Her story is not about wealth or even justice. It's about grace, the kind that survives betrayal and still chooses compassion. When people spoke her name, they didn't think of heartbreak anymore. They thought of resilience. They thought of possibility. And as the music fades, if Serena's story touched something in you, share it. Because somewhere, another woman is standing in her own silence, wondering if she can start again. Tell her she can, and stay with us for the next story that will remind you just how powerful quiet strength can be.